Hey everybody, Ed here with the Digital Digest, and today I wanted to share a quick preview for the Microsoft Surface Pro 3. This was announced just a few days ago here in New York, and it really does represent a step in the right direction when it comes to redefining the Surface lineup for Microsoft. Now, this only addresses the Pro line, but we've stepped up to a larger screen size, moving from that 10.6-inch that was both in the first and second gen to a 12.2-inch display, also with higher resolution. But before I get to specifications, let's just talk about the available configurations that Microsoft is offering, as well as availability. So the least expensive option is the one you're looking at on screen right now. That is an i3 option. That was something that never existed in the past. $799. That has a 64 gig SSD. Of course, 64 gig has always been the entry level for the Surface lineup. You then can step up to the 128 gig model with an i5 processor for $999. Keep in mind, both of those models will sport 4 gigs of RAM. You cannot upgrade that RAM. It is soldered onto this machine, onto the motherboard. Also, general improvements for these beyond the actual gain in screen size and resolution. You also have Bluetooth 4.0, an improved Wi-Fi chipset that now includes AC connectivity, as well as some other specifications that, as I mentioned, I'll get to a little bit later. If you want to step up to really what I believe is the sweet spot in the lineup, it is the 256 gig SSD i5, and that's because you're getting the 8 gigs of RAM, the best of both worlds, and many could argue the difference between the i5 and i7 processor in here, after all this is an Ultrabook at heart, is a negligible difference at best. It is a 4th gen Haswell chip. You can also then step up from that $1,300 price point to $1,550 with the 256 i7. Now, i7 options were not previously available for either the first or second gen Surface Pro, so this really just shows that Microsoft has done well, or at least is continuing to grow this business and believes there is a bright future for it, and that's why we now have a lot more options. And then last but not least, the most expensive build, which is priced at $1949, is the 512 gig SSD i7 version. Again, also sporting 8 gig. So remember, the i7 versions have 8 gig, as does the i5 with the 256. So really, 256 and up is going to net you 8 gigs of RAM, whether you're i5 or i7. Anything below that, meaning 64 or 128, you're going to have not only different processors, but also only 4 gigs of RAM, which may be more than enough. And that's where Microsoft is smart about what they're doing here, because there really is a price point for just about everyone. So when you look at what they're pitching here, it's clear it's not just about being a hybrid. They want to replace your Ultrabook, which is ironic considering this is Microsoft. And they do business with all of the manufacturers of those Ultrabooks. But at 1.76 pounds, again, a 12+ inch display here, you really are looking at a zero compromise experience. 9 hours of battery life. They boast the fact that it's got a larger screen, lighter form, and that's because it does. They've changed the orientation of the Windows button. You can see it's now on the right side of the machine, and the looks generally lend themselves far more to what the Surface 2 looks like, the actual tablet, which I think is a good thing. I think they realized that was the more attractive of their designs, of at least the designs they've had, and they went with what works. And they talk about right here in terms of the form that you're getting more function because it is a more powerful device, larger display, higher res, better hardware all around, better cameras, and also better flexibility with the kickstand. Of course, a reminder that with Windows 8.1 Pro, you're going to run anything you want as you would on a computer, but limitations are there because you are working with low voltage processors, you are working with integrated graphics. We don't have Intel HD 5000 here, it is the 4400, so no bump up there, but and at least a promise of better drivers, at least updated drivers, with the launch of this product. After all, they want this Microsoft to run as well as it possibly can out of the box. And then you can see revolutionary laptop. Well, they're talking about the flexibility now of the kickstand. The original Surface and Surface Pro had only one move on the kickstand. It was expanded with the second generation. Now you've got complete flexibility where this thing can go almost flush, completely flat. So it's really however you want to adjust it, you can. Also, in terms of what's on board, they have changed the charging port. Something important to note, you do not have the same charging port on board. You do still have a USB 3.0 port, as well as a micro SD card slot for storage expansion. Front-facing speakers now, which I think is a very big improvement. Also, the pen has changed. This is another important thing to point out. No Wacom. They've now gone with N-Trig, and I know a lot of you may wince at hearing that, but from everything that I've heard and seen, it seems like Microsoft, whatever they did with N-Trig here, really has worked out well. And I'll only know once I get it, so I'm not going to give it credit for anything yet prematurely, as I usually will not with any product. But I expect good things because Microsoft, as usual, has a lot riding on the Surface, literally the success of the Surface here. And the Pro 3 really does represent, at least in my opinion, the most impressive of any offering that they've had in this tablet lineup. But the promise of writing naturally on the display, and again, that display 2560 by 1600 resolution, so you're stepping up to another level. 1080p is not where things are capping out anymore, which is nice to see in a Windows-driven tablet like this that still is so lightweight. And then if you attach the optional keyboard, which has been redesigned, after all, it does need to be larger to actually cover this device. It does now have a larger trackpad, same $130 price point. Also has a holder for the new redesigned pen, which has its own button on top to launch OneNote. So new features there with that partnership with N-Trig, and just also, again, maturation and feedback from users on Surface Pro and Surface Pro 2, basically telling Microsoft what they'd like to see in the next generation. And that's exactly what I think we got. I think a lot of people were on the fence about the first and second gen at 10.6 inches really not being enough to replace and their Ultrabook or laptop, depending on how much power they really require. And now this solves that problem. Also, the keyboard has its magnetic capability where it can essentially lock on and give you an angled layout so that it's a more natural, more laptop-like or Ultrabook experience. So a lot of things going for this machine. Microsoft taking on the MacBook Pro directly, or excuse me, the MacBook Air, of course, not the Pro. That is a laptop. But the Air, and basically just showing you why the Surface Pro 3 dumps on it, which is really obvious. I mean, if you're looking at price point, if you're not loyal to an OS, then it's very obvious that Microsoft with the Pro 3 has made a fantastic product at a reasonable price point, especially since there's nothing else like it. I'm not saying because of what they've put together here in the chart. It's just a matter of you can't show me anything else really like it out there, especially from Apple. But moving right along, and they're, by the way, comparing that with the 13-inch Air, which is 3 pounds as opposed to the 2.4 with the cover. Also, 9 hours of battery life here, so it's just about a wash there. Of course, multi-touch display, no touch on Apple. I guess they don't want to cannibalize the iPad business, but eventually that'll change, as most things do. And then, finally, the ability to be a laptop or a tablet, which is an obvious old thing that isn't going to persuade anyone really, even though that is a great feature of Surface. Plenty of people will easily pick up a mobile OS-based tablet for a lot less money. And then last but not least, the tech specs that I said I would eventually get to. So Windows 8.1 Pro, as I mentioned before, you can see 1.76 pounds. The same Vapor Mag build quality, the actual construction that they use, rather than a traditional magnesium alloy or an aluminum. That's their own branded proprietary material. The color is silver, like Surface 2. That's kind of why it reminds me of it, besides the fact that it's also slimmer than the original Pro and Pro 2. Then the capacities, after you've actually booted up, what kind of storage are you going to have? Well, with the 64, basically they're breaking down the 64 will give you 36 gigs of available space. The 128 will yield 96. The 256 will give you 211. And then last but not least, the 512 will give you 450. So that's the breakdown for those of you curious about how much space will actually be available. The screen, again, is a 12-inch ClearType. I didn't mention the ClearType technology. Microsoft has used this across all of their Surface tablets. And essentially, with this brand new display, you are getting that bump up, as I mentioned, to 2160. I misspoke before. I said 2560 by 1600. It is 2160 by 1440, which makes a lot more sense. And I did know that it was just a little bit of a flib there, because after all, that is a native resolution for Windows to begin with out of the box. So, that's another thing that, or at least for this tablet that they've designed with this panel. Aspect ratio is 3 to 2, which is a deviation as well, as opposed to the 16 by 9. And you also have 10 points of multi-touch, which is expected. The 4th gen Intel processor I was mentioning before, i3, i5, or i7, we went through that, the 4 or 8 gig variation, as well as the difference in the Wi-Fi now that you have AC connectivity, as opposed to the previous generation, as well as Bluetooth 4.0, 9 hours of battery with traditional light usage like web browsing. Of course, if you push it, I'm expecting to see 6 or 7 hours, which is realistic in a tablet this size, or even an Ultrabook for that matter, or laptop. Of course, the full don't want to skip the cameras, 5 megapixel HD camera, front and rear, so that's an upgrade. I expect an improvement, but I'm not buying this for the cameras, and I don't think most users are either. But everyone would like to see quality cameras on such an expensive device. Of course, ambient light sensor, the USB 3.0 port, which is full size, micro SD card slot, which I wish would have gone full size, considering this is a significantly larger, although not significantly heavier device. I wish they would have thrown that in there, especially with the extra resolution on this display. It would have been great for a number of reasons, regular users, photographers. Anyway, that's a whole nother story. But other than that, it just seems like they got it right. If you had a checklist, they probably hit everything that you wanted here in the brand new Surface Pro 3. It's expensive. The accessories, there's also a dock, by the way. I mentioned that the new cover will work with this, it is backwards compatible with the older Surface Pro and Surface Pro 2. However, it's not going to fit that one proportionately either, because it is, again, designed to fit the Surface Pro 3. Because of its larger surface area, as is the new pen, which is a redesign priced at $50 on its own. Even the new Power Brick is smaller because that's been redesigned. It's got a much more convenient and easy charging port. You can see it right there. For anyone that owned the first or second generation, it wasn't a very seamless connecting port there. In order to hook it up, you always had to work a little bit. Here, it's just going to magnetically snap the same way the Type and touch covers do, which is exactly the way it should have been the first time around. And we definitely don't need your help right now, Microsoft. But that's the idea. So all of the older touch covers and type covers that are less expensive will work if you own them already. They're compatible. The original dock is not compatible with the Surface Pro 3. You will need to pick up a new one. I don't think they have it listed here yet. It's not available, at least on Microsoft's site for the store. That is priced at $200, so also expensive, same price point as the original dock, so no surprise there, and pretty much the same array. I think it's 3 USB 3.0 ports and 2 USB 2.0, Ethernet, audio out, something to that effect, and of course DisplayPort with daisy chain capability and 4K output capability at that. So a lot to like in this brand new version. Hope you all enjoyed the preview. I'm looking forward to getting this in my hands. As I mentioned, it is already on order, so it's just a matter of time. You saw the availabilities: June for the i5 configurations, August for the i3 and i7. Any questions or comments, please feel free to post them. And of course, as usual, please feel free to subscribe. Later.